In this video, we're going to discuss the validity and reliability of instruments. When we read a quantitative research report, we want to be able to critique the data collection methods that the researchers used. We will consider how the variables were specified and whether or not they were defined appropriately. We'll look at the types of tools used in a study, whether they are demographic questionnaires, measures of performance, attitude scales, and so on. And we'll critique whether or not the researcher has provided good evidence that the tools or instruments that they used were up to the task. Here are some examples of instruments that you're likely to see as you explore the literature. So, a researcher may complete rating scales, fill out observation forms, or performance checklists, and they may also provide interview guides. Participants often provide information by completing questionnaires, completing checklists, filling out attitude scales, or completing tests such as personality tests or achievement tests. It's not enough for a researcher to simply tell us that the instrument measures what we're interested in. There are ways that the researcher can demonstrate the validity of their scales, and we need to look out for this evidence as we critique the literature. It's especially important for researchers to be transparent about the validity of their instruments if they developed their own, and there's a few ways that they can do so. So let's look at a few different types of validity. The first type is content validity. And when we consider content validity, we're asking, are the items relevant to and representative of the construct in question? Now, a researcher might demonstrate content and face validity by inviting others, such as reviewers or even the reader, to judge whether or not the items on the instrument fit well with the content they intend to express. Another way to demonstrate the validity of an instrument is to check that the scores that one gets on a particular scale meaningfully relates to other variables in predictable ways. When a researcher tries to demonstrate convergent validity, they are demonstrating that constructs that are expected to be related actually are related. So let's say that the researcher is interested in preschoolers' confidence, but they know that preschoolers' levels of social skill are related to confidence. Scores on the new scale measuring confidence should correlate with scales on a standard instrument of social skills development. If they do, then this is evidence for convergent validity. This gives us more confidence that the construct of interest has been defined in a way that makes sense. A researcher can also demonstrate divergent validity. If the construct of interest should not be expected to overlap at all with some other idea, then the researcher can look for evidence that the constructs that should have no relationship actually are not related. So, for example, you might not expect scores on an instrument designed to measure aggressiveness to relate very well with an instrument measuring intelligence. If that's what's happening in a sample, then you have reason to believe that the instrument may not have been constructed well, may not be specific enough to the construct of interest to be very useful. A necessary condition for our belief that an instrument is valid is that the instrument should perform the same way every time it's used. This means that the instrument has high reliability, and there's a few ways that a researcher can demonstrate that their instrument can be used again and again and return pretty much the same result. There are a few types of reliability that are often of interest to us in education research. One type of reliability is internal consistency. This is where we ask, how well does each item relate to the other items on the same scale? We want all of our scale items to be similarly good at measuring our construct. So when we compare how responses to items that are supposed to be related actually do correlate with each other, we're assessing the internal consistency of the test. Another source of evidence of reliability that is often of interest to us is test-retest reliability. And this is where we compare across multiple uses of the same test. For tests of fairly stable characteristics, we need to see that every time someone with similar characteristics takes this test, they score about the same way. A third type of reliability that you may see reported is inter-rater reliability, and this is especially used in observational studies where you have multiple judges rating the same occurrence. So let's say you have an observation guide which says that if a student is playing with a phone, then that's an off-task behavior. And you have 3 researchers watching this one student. If the 3 judges can't consistently agree that the student was off-task, there might be something unclear about the guidelines that were given to them. So how do we assess if the scores that are reported in a research report are reliable and valid? Well, the most accessible cues to us as the readers is to see what the researchers actually reports. Ideally, they should cite the literature showing that the instrument has been used for research purposes in the past and was found to be reliable and valid then. If they've developed their own instrument, they should report on how the test was developed and how they have assessed things like the convergent and divergent validity. They can include the items used on a test for you to be able to judge whether or not they are clear and unambiguous. And they can also include discussion of the procedures that they used in including expert reviewers in assessing the items on their instrument to see whether or not they are appropriate. So that's all for this discussion of reliability and validity of instruments, and I hope it was useful to you.